Bada bing, bada boom.
Am I
Bada
recording?
bing, bada boom.
We are recording. Okay.
And that's how I killed that guy one summer. Oh wait, we're recording now?
So I would like to welcome everyone to the Geek Press podcast number 2. So every podcast, it's my goal to have someone more famous than I am. So we had Jacob Knight, Noah Garcia, and now we have one fourth of the Waffle Press. I'm pretty sure he is the waffle of the Waffle Press. There is no Waffle Press without him. It's Mr. Diego Crespo.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So-
I'm definitely not more famous than you.
Someone who has dealt with my shit for way too long, and so he continuously deals with my shit, which I appreciate.
I deal with everyone's shit. I think the world is just dealing with each other's shit at this point, you know?
Okay, Diego, for those who don't know who you are, which is like the two people who are watching this and listening to this, can you explain to them who you are?
I am Diego Crespo. Luis and I met because I was his editor-in-chief at El Paisano. And let's see, what don't you know about me? I run and host podcasts on the Waffle Press, which is a passion project for me and friends where we talk about films. Two of my friends, Gene and Nick Valero, talk about comic books on there. I don't really talk about them as much just because I tapped out, but I like them. I just don't do it. I focus a lot on film retrospectives, on filmmakers and classic film, and then obviously monthly and weekly releases, which are a little weird right now because, you know, everything.
So with that, we're just gonna talk about like fandoms and all that. So all of us here are more or less all into the same stuff, like whether it be culturally, sexually, politically, you know, all the leads. So we want
You're not wrong.
So I know Diego's a very opinionated person when it comes to film, so I wanted to talk about Star Wars first because there's a lot of stuff, which the three of us are very big Star Wars fans, but then again, half of the world is Star Wars fans. I know you have like mixed feelings about the new trilogy, and then I'm like, it's okay, but like you're very strongly opinionated, and so are you, Noah, right? Like you guys have a lot of beats you want to talk about, and I'm just gonna go ahead.
No, Spock is my favorite character. He's my favorite Klingon in the Star Wars universe. I loved when him and Khan fought. Yeah, that's.
Well, like I want to say too, like, okay, so I'll let you take it off first, Diego. So I think we can all agree that the first one, The Force Awakens, was overall a good movie, even though it was like hash for hash, A New Hope, but it was an overall good movie.
I would call it a great movie, and I did not expect that going in because I like J.J. Abrams, but he is kind of like, you know what you're gonna get from him, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like comfort food too. I think he's got as many good movies as he does bad movies, and they're always entertaining. Like on a moment-to-moment basis, they're always entertaining. I think Force Awakens is the first one where I'm like, I think there's a lot more going on in that film than he gets credit for. And it does have plot similarities to the like every film in the original trilogy, honestly. But I think the characters and like the themes of it are totally different from what came before, and they're expanding on it for a new generation. And I think that's why it was so successful, because like a lot of films are similar to one another, you know.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you get like two films that come out the same like year and they're like kind of the same plot, like White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen.
Oh, that was fun. That was a fun time.
But like you watch those two movies and they're like totally different. They feel different, and I think that's what Force Awakens kind of is. But like better than those other movies. And I like White House Down, but still.
I will say this too. Like one thing I really did appreciate. Yeah, that's right. I interrupted you, Noah.
I love you, Noah.
One thing I really did appreciate about The Force Awakens, and I have a really fond memory of this, is just because I remember like thinking to myself, okay, like this is my generation Star Wars, you know, like the generation before me had the original trilogy, and the one prior to that had the new, well, you know what I mean, episode 1 through 3, and the one prior to that had the original ones, and so I was like, okay, now I'm getting my own, and this is really awesome. And I just had this really fond memories. I ran into my cousins at the theater. Well, he married into the family, and so I see him taking his son into the theater and like, look, we're gonna watch Star Wars together. Like, this is something I loved watching as a kid growing up. I'm like, damn, this is fucking cute right here. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to see, and I was so happy to see that. And like, that's why I like the original one. Like the episode 7 has such like has such a soft spot in my heart just because I associate it with that memory. And I just remember too, like watching it and getting teary. I'm like, fuck, I'm really watching a new Star Wars movie in theaters right now. Like, this is awesome.
Just to throw my piece in there, I know we're generally talking about fandoms in general, but since we're just talking about that movie for randomly, I think what is brilliantly surprising about that film is that there's this idea of uh, repetition of values and traditions that don't essentially work out, such as the Jedi Code, is what kind of helped lead to their downfall. And you think at the end of Return of the Jedi that Luke has broken that, but when we see him again, it says, "Oops, nope, I've dropped everything." And I think the repetitiveness that's within the beats of The Force Awakens is kind of indicative of like, oh look, we went back to this and it's not working. And then when you have The Last Jedi, it's breaking free and realizing, oh, that doesn't work anymore. We need to strive for better. So I think in that sense, even though it wasn't intentional, the repetitive of those beats is good.
Yeah, most definitely. And I will say too, the Last Jedi is when the Star Wars community started looking a lot like an anime community. It was where everyone had to choose a fucking side, and you're with us or you're against us kind of thing. And I know I will stand by this. I say The Last Jedi is a meh movie. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad. It was like eh. And I know Diego fucking praises the shit out of that movie. And but like these are more civilized like opinions that we're taking. But I've seen Diego like go at it with some people. I'm like, God damn right now, dude. I'm just like eating my popcorn. I'm like that gif of Michael Jackson. Like what do you think was so divisive about that though? Like what caused that like toxicity within such a beloved community?
There's, I think, a couple things. I think one is fan entitlement. You see this with like video games all the time. Like Last of Us 2 kind of had it, where it's like, well, that's not what. Like, how dare you disrespect this character
Yeah,
that
I saw
I
you
loved so
tweet some stuff
much?
about that too. Like you thought it was okay, like the second half, right? I briefly saw it.
Like bits and pieces of it are great, and bits and pieces of it don't work. And I think The Last Jedi, for me, like just as a movie, like from top to bottom, from the writing standpoint, the direction, the camera work, the production design is like incredible in that movie. No one talks about how like it's a color coded blockbuster where like each set is specifically coded to represent like an idea or like a presence of something that I just find really impressive. Because like you look at The Force Awakens, a movie that I also love, it's just like, isn't this so colorful and exciting? And it is, because you want to be excited again. Last Jedi is like, let's take a step back. Why are we excited about this? What if the myths and the legends that we got excited about weren't all that great? And that's kind of the question. And the answer at the end of Last Jedi is like, no, those things are important, but it's time for a new perspective on them. And I don't think I think people straight up just are not paying attention. But I also think it's important to like have these kind of conversations to get people to like pay attention more to movies, you know? Because like I love like chomping down on popcorn and be like, that was fun, and like you move on with my life sometimes. But sometimes the movie asks a little more of its audience. And I think The Last Jedi asks a lot of a Star Wars audience to be like, let's just take a step back. Let's look at Star Wars as a whole. Maybe the Jedi haven't always been in the right. And even George Lucas's prequels trilogy, like the
that
Testament,
was like the whole thing. Yeah,
that's the whole thing. The Jedi are flawed. They lose the moment they enter the Clone Wars. They don't lose at the end of Revenge of the Sith. They lose when they start the Clone Wars. And it's out of their hands, but they allowed that evil to rise. And so The Last Jedi is just making us recontextualize the entire Star Wars saga like that. It's like, look what happened again. The First Order rose up out of the ashes of the Empire. The Empire never went away. And if we keep doing the same things over and over again, this cycle will never break.
So would you say that The Last Jedi was heavily inspired by the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith then, where it's more of like the Jedis are flawed and they're not as good as you think they are?
I totally would. I mean, Rian Johnson, he's been a very vocal like supporter of the prequel trilogy. And you don't have to like those movies. I agree they do have flaws, mostly from the execution, but the ideas in there are like completely sound, and like I wish more people would take those ideas and run with them in other movies too. You know, like, stuff you love is never gonna be perfect, and that's okay. You have to like question things. Just because you critique something doesn't mean you're negative towards it. Just means you want to understand it better. And I think that's why The Last Jedi is like one of my favorites of the series.
What about?
I want to say that the observation that the Star Wars fandom all of a sudden became divisive and toxic is a bit of a broad statement. Because let me tell you about a man named Ahmed Best, aka Jar Jar Binks.
This is you're totally. I know where you're going. Yes, you're right.
That poor man was bullied so much. You know how much, I don't remember his name. You know how much the actor who played Annie was bullied?
Didn't he like quit acting?
Jake Lloyd. He had a lot of like mental health problems because of like the fandom abuse.
The fandom has always been not great. And as for Diego's point about criticizing, I think the thing is that's become very popular within the past maybe decade has been very quick, brief points against a movie, and then that's it. Like they'll say, "Oh, this is bad because of this," and then that's the stance, and there's no development on your stance, and there's no development of your analysis, and then you're stuck like that. So I think the issue is that because of that trend and because of the toxicity, one of the reasons Last Jedi was just so divisive is because it was just a powder cake of Star Wars fandom growing over, building into movie trends and criticization, and it was a whole thing. Like, so it's always been like this. It was just like you dropped a different type of Kool-Aid into the mix, and then everyone went crazy.
That is true. Yeah. To backpedal a little bit, I don't want this whole thing to be about Star Wars because we want to talk about fandoms. What do you think like causes that fandom? Like, obviously, it has to be good enough to where people get attached to the characters, whether it's the writing, the music, the scenery, whatever it may be. But like, how would you think like a fan? The hell are you doing over there, Noah?
He's parking.
I know. So like, what would you think makes a fandom good versus like toxic? Because like one thing we talked about, I remember this conversation we had a little while back when I said Fight Club was one of my favorite movies, and you're like, God damn. I remember the guy who directed the movie doesn't allow his daughter to date anyone who likes the movie because of like how fucking over the top the fan base is. And so like that's what I want to talk about too, is like at what point does a fandom become toxic versus like a sincere fandom?
I don't have an answer for that. I think in some capacity there's always going to be bad eggs. I think at a certain point you have to recognize when it's time to leave something behind for a little bit. You know, like not to get into a whole political spiel, but sometimes it's not just bad apples. Sometimes the tree is just sick and you need to replace that tree. Right.
True.
And so like, I remember when like Lady Ghostbusters came out, and like, I think that's a fine film. I don't love it or hate it, but like men online specifically were like, this ruined like my life. And it's just like, it's not real. It doesn't impact anyone's existence. It's just a movie you're going to see over the course of a weekend. Right. And it's just like, that was over Ghostbusters. Like, that's like actually insane. That's like not healthy.
It's funny too it's funny that you mentioned that, because like I never saw that Ghostbusters, not because they weren't women, just because I have a good theory, and he's proven me wrong on this one time, and I haven't seen it yet, that whenever Chris Hemsworth does not Thor, the movie is bad and the acting is really bad. And so I want to see the movie on Netflix, which I heard is like the Netflix John Wick. Anyways, okay, that's not here nor there. I haven't seen it, but I've heard like the movie doesn't deserve the hate. Like it was overall, it was a decent movie, you know.
He's really funny in it. I
really?
think
Okay.
I'll fight you over Chris Hemsworth. I think he's the second best Chris out of all the Chris's.
What about Liam Hemsworth?
He's not a Chris.
Wait.
I like Liam Hemsworth.
Oh wait, no, I thought you said Hemsworth. My bad.
No. Out of all the Hollywood Chris's, I think it's Chris Pine and then Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, Chris Pine gets slept on. He's a pretty good dude all around. Okay.
Sorry about that. I was getting yelled at, but just to throw my just to throw my
On to the next topic. I'm just kidding.
No.
Fun fact, Diego, this is how our conversations go. Like, I'll be talking to Lewis and I'll say something and he said, anyways, Noah, I think it's once again going back to that immediate judge and then never development of your opinion thing that's so popular. They saw Ghostbusters, hated it, and then that was it. Like, there's no talking sense into people who have already decided that their way is the right way. And I mean, I'm gonna be frank right now. I've never seen Ghostbusters, but I have seen that Ghostbusters. Let me tell you, it was fine. Liam Hemsworth was funny. He was enjoyable.
Chris, why are we having so much trouble with the Hemsworth brothers?
I don't know. They're all white and hunky. I don't know.
That's true.
But it's just that it's that feed loop echo chamber where everyone just gets mad about the same thing without developing a specific or unique thought on it. And when you do, you get attacked. So
that's something too. Like I wanted to touch on because I play a lot of Grand Theft Auto Online, and so one of the cars that they have in the game, well, like they straight up like rip off like other stuff. Like there's the Batmobile in the game. There's like Tron bikes, and the other thing I saw, and it just like it's always in the back of my head because of like how much I love it, was Speed Racer. And so they have the Mach 5 in the car, but it's not called the Mach 5. It's called something else. And I was thinking, I was like, that was such a fucking good anime. And I remember growing up watching it with my stepdad. And then I remember watching the movie and I loved it. I loved it as a kid. I thought it was fucking great. But just a lot of people just bashed on the movie. They're like, this is the worst movie ever. And then like the Speed Racer fandom, what little left of it was, just started bashing one another. And then fast forward now, people are saying like, this movie was actually pretty fucking great. Like, this was good, the visual effects. And I'm like, that's what I've been saying since I was a kid. And that's what I think is funny too, like how quickly fandoms can go back on what they said. And I think like, do you ever think that's gonna happen with Star Wars? We're gonna circle it back to Star Wars now.
Yeah, I mean, you can just look at mob mentalities, and it's just digital mob mentalities when everyone just starts hitting something and then everyone disagrees.
What about you?
I think Noah's right, like completely. Like, I mean, for our generation, like the prequels were the one, like that was like, oh yeah, we love the prequels. And now like prequel memes became like a thing because people made fun of them because like the acting is a little stilted sometimes or stuff's a little goofy. And it's like, sometimes that's intentional. But now there's an unironic sentimentality about the Star Wars prequels where it's like, no, these are great. And we're like looking at like the political themes of it. And it's like, oh, it's about like the rise of fascism and like when democracy stands idly by and allows like certain enterprises and people unquestioningly into their midst. And it's like, wow, that's weird. Why is that so relevant now?
Would you say movies like that, and okay, well that's a little bit more deeper than like the theme of Speed Racer, but like
I would argue that it's not, because Speed Racer, I agree, it is a great film. It's about keeping your identity in the midst of a world that wants you to sell it out.
Would you say those movies were made ahead of their time then?
Totally. I mean, the prequels, like, they jumped technology like a decade ahead for the entire industry. Because of the Star Wars prequels, we're not like, it's not a direct correlation, but that's a big reason why people can make like movies on their phones now. Like George Lucas like reinvented the medium basically.
Didn't, and then people like the guy who made Avatar do the same thing? James Cameron.
James Cameron. Yeah. James Cameron is like insane. I'm really sorry if you can hear a truck backing up. I have no idea what that is.
No, but it's all good. That just Noah's fat ass backing up.
Hey, leave him out.
No, just let him bully me.
I was complimenting you and your juicy butt.
What podcast is I on right now? No, James Cameron did do that too, and he's doing it again. That's why it took so long for the Avatar sequels to get made. Wasn't
right.
because
I always
people
forget
were dragging their feet. It's because he's a crazy person, and
he's somewhere in the bottom of the ocean. Like, we're gonna film the Avatar.
Yeah,
it's like, James, get out of your submarine.
I mean, that is ridiculous. Like, I love James Cameron, but I would never work with him. It's like, you're CGing the whole movie. Why do you have them underwater? Whatever. He made Terminator 2. He can do whatever he wants.
I saw this tweet and it took me a minute to get it, and I'm happy I'm talking to you about it because you probably know a lot more about it. It was it was a BTS of Tenet. That's the new Christopher Nolan movie, right?
Yep.
Okay, and it was Robert Pattinson sitting down, and, like, he was in full costume and everything, and he was sitting down, and he was like, Christopher Nolan doesn't want to work with Robert Pattinson ever again now, and apparently it's a thing that, like, Christopher Nolan doesn't let anyone sit on set. Have you heard anything about that?
No,
I have.
that's just the director. He doesn't like himself sitting on set. 'Cause he doesn't
Oh,
want-
okay.
Yeah.
So everyone else can
It's
sit.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
It's this thing that got blown up online. I think
See,
there's plenty of stuff to like critique Nolan about, but it's like, and
Mhm.
I love him. Like, Tenet's my most anticipated movie of next year because I don't think movies are going to happen this year. Just that's a
We
take
got
I have.
Scooby Doo. We got Scooby
Theaters.
Doo.
Let me say, I apologize. I don't think theaters are going to happen, and Tenet's not coming out on direct-to-video. It's going to be the biggest movie of whatever year it's released eventually. But yeah, Christopher Nolan just doesn't sit down because he's like working all the time. He's on
Mhm.
set, and he
Yeah, so
doesn't
that was
have
just for him.
chairs. He doesn't have chairs like in Video Village. You guys know what Video Village is?
No.
Okay, Video Village is just like the thing on set when you're watching like from behind the camera. Some directors use a Video Village to stay out of the set area and watch from a distance through the monitor. So you
Okay.
can keep an eye on things. And he doesn't allow those chairs on the set, like on the literal set where they're filming. He allows them like in other areas so people can sit down. Like, he also doesn't allow water bottles, but it doesn't mean he doesn't allow water, you know? He doesn't allow water bottles because they make noise and it ruins like
Okay, so
audio
he's
sometimes.
super particular of how he works. then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's like a huge asshole in some other thing. I don't know him, right? I'm a fan, but I don't know him. So
Well, you know
I
what?
don't know.
We got Christopher Nolan joining the Zoom right now.
He's a big anime fan.
Yeah,
so that'll be
we
fun.
talk about Death Note every other day.
That sounds about right.
And that's kind of just to reiterate back into the point that was made earlier. That's kind of the one thought culture where they see a headline, they don't read it, but they see the headline and people just say, "Oh, what an asshole!" Tweet about it, and that's it. But if you read the article, you would have gone and said, "Oh, that's kind of just for him." And it's just
Yeah.
fandom is not a monolith. It's very much this diverse ocean of thoughts and opinions, and sometimes these just huge waves of contempt towards one thing, of celebration of one thing, can just kind of scramble everything else. So it's really interesting when like from a sociological standpoint to just look at fandom of any property, cartoons, movies, comics, whatever. There's toxicity, there's praising, and it's just, if we're looping this all back to Star Wars, toxic works and sells much better online than praising does. So it's just that, the hate sells. Hate sells.
That is true.
I actually, on that point, I think that's correct, but I also don't want to downplay like how some positivity can blow up once in a while too,
Yeah, of
because
course.
we're putting it on like on the people in
Positivity.
fandom, but like
I said
also
positivity.
also people working like in the industry, like trying to grab headlines. I think there's a big responsibility on like certain outlets that like benefit off, like, I think it was IndieWire that posted like the exclusive that like, hey, he doesn't actually like
Yeah.
hate chairs on set. And I don't know, they're like one of the first ones to be like actually look into it and just say like, hey, that's not what they're saying.
Yeah, I think there's like I want to touch on two topics. So everyone shut the fuck up and let me. I'm just kidding. So one of like a case of bad like fandom toxicity is Game of Thrones. I know the writers, like, they went like on a social media blackout for like 2 weeks or something, because they were like super afraid of everyone bashing the ending, love it or hate it. But like they just knew their fandom was gonna like rip them to shreds no matter what. And I think that's like a really, really sad thing with someone who essentially, like, they made the show come to life. Sure, they had a lot of source material to lean from, but at the end of the day, it was them who like brought these words to life and like created this world out of nothing. And I'm like, you gotta appreciate that these guys they're fucking trying. Like, people like you and I, just for the sake of conversation, people like you and I may say, fuck this, I could do it way better, but we don't know how to fucking CGI a dragon. We don't know how to do this, or how to orchestrate like a 10-point camera setup. So I think that's really like that's where stuff gets like really fucked up. But I will say, like, another, like, a good case of fandom is I think it was like 2 years ago where everyone fell in love again with Keanu Reeves. And then you saw Keanu Reeves fucking everywhere. Like, he got signed to do like more John Wicks. He was in Cyberpunk. He was in Netflix movies. And like, I think that's like a really good case of fandom right there, where it's like you get this great person and you build them up even more. And I think that's like more sincere stuff we got to see. We just need to see more Keanu Reeves. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Keanu Reeves should be in a Christopher Nolan movie. That's actually kind of crazy that he isn't. I feel like they'd get along very well.
Oh yeah.
And to back myself up for a second, I have loved Keanu Reeves since I first saw him in Speed in 2005 on cable television. Also watch Speed; it's a masterpiece. But no, yeah, I mean, I think it does at the end of the day fall on us to just do the right thing and participate in fandom, not fandom, if you get my meaning. Yeah, I'm definitely the first one who's come up with that joke. Don't Google
I
that.
haven't heard it before, so I believe you.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you both. But like, we have to highlight the good that these fandoms can do and stuff like that. And I mean, like, look at, again, I guess this is all about Star Wars. Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose Tico in The Last Jedi. Like, you don't have to like love that character like I do, but like when you're like
the shit she got.
Yeah, no, it's just like unacceptable. It was like really racist, misogynistic comments, and it's just like, oh, these are like genuine assholes. They're not interested in talking about like the material of the movie. They just like they have problems with
like I feel like if they would have gone at her for like, this is gonna sound wrong out of context, but like if they would have gone at her for the right reasons, let's say like I didn't like your character because maybe it was poorly written or your actions weren't believable.
I think even that might be too much, because
no, but I'm saying like constructively, not like just to go at her for the sake.
But she's an actress doing a job, you know.
Yeah.
In the biggest corporation for the biggest franchise on the planet, she can't rewrite the character.
It would kind of be like going up to a construction building. It can kind of be like going up to a construction worker and being like, I don't like the building you built. And they're just like, well, I was just hired for a job. And like, you want to talk about my skills, and yes, like how I did in the role, but don't attack. If you're going to attack the character, don't attack the actress. Make the comment to the writer.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah.
I want to say that.
I just want to say the oh my god, I'm sorry. I'll just say really quick. The positive side of this story is that when she did show up for the Rise of Skywalker panel at Star Wars Celebration last year in 2019, she was given like a standing ovation from the people on stage and in the audience.
Oh, that's sweet.
Because the majority of people do actually like this is not a surprise to anyone who has like any awareness of the world. The Last Jedi is actually a really beloved film, and it's just like people online that get like really mad about it, and or just don't care too much about it, you know. Like, I mean, when Rise of Skywalker came out, there were like headlines saying like it's not as good as The Last Jedi from like critics, you know, and they're not paid to be nice to movies or mean to movies. They're just doing their job too, you know? So I think there's a roundabout way of the world kind of settling the balance once in a while. We just have to,
just like Thanos said, nicely. You know, like perfectly balanced.
No. Oh, you want to see mean? Oh, we're not doing that.
Well, let's not get into that. That's too much. Yeah. But I want to talk about the idea. You made a point, Lewis, earlier about, I think we all made the same point about fandoms going after trying to critique rather than hate. And what I thought was a really interesting fandom that to look at as of late is The Last of Us 2 was recently released. Neil Druckmann on Twitter said he had to take some days off because he was bombarded by hate. But the hate there, I'm gonna ride with them. I'm ride or die with this critique, because the hate wasn't, the specific hate, the most of it wasn't like female character. It wasn't like, oh, you're an idiot. It was a critique of the writing. And that general critique can often get mixed up with the just awful, like, blatant bashing of characters, like, how dare she be a lesbian, like crap like that. That can often get in the way and associated with actual good critique. And I saw so much good critique of The Last of Us Part 2 because the story is just, in my opinion, not great. It starts off okay, falls flat for me. It's a parade of sadness, and a lot of that good critique that I thought was at least reasonable in a sense got swallowed up by a lot of those negative headline catching, like, people complain about this, and it's interesting to see how that develops when something is released like that.
Okay, so let me pass the question to you guys then. How would you say, like, so to we're all journalists in one way or another, and and how would, okay, so like let's say you're writing an article and you're saying um the Last of Us fandom is super bad, but there is some like good ones in there. You know, like how would you cherry pick that without like crossing everyone with a blanket statement?
Do you want to take a first note? Or do you want me to?
Can you reiterate the question?
Okay, so it's like saying you're writing an article based like, and you're saying like the Last of Us fandom is super bad, but you know, but in the headline, you of course you word it better, saying like, but there is some people who are actually giving good criticism. So it's like, how do you say that, like, you know, most of them is toxic, but not all of them are. Like, how do you cherry pick? You know?
I guess that's really just a structural question about how to deliver
Yeah, because I'm writing a fucking headline,
writing.
okay, guys?
The divisive critique on The Last of Us Part 2, and then just go into how there are, of course, gamer guys that are just being dumb and being like, oh, girl protagonist, oh. And where there are people that are like, I am an advocacy against sexual harassment, against gay bashing, and my perspective is this. You know, you need to highlight those who have the experience and research and knowledge and have done their work, and say, this is why this is this way because of this, and then just highlight those experiences. And I think that would be helpful. And now I'm going to hand it to Diego because I feel like he'll have a much better answer than I.
No, I think you do have to get it all in there. So like I am writing my bit on Last of Us 2. So here's a sneak peek. I think
a Geek
at
Press
times
exclusive.
it's a great game, and other times it's like, why is it 30 hours?
Okay, yeah.
And why is it makes its point about half its playthrough through, and then it keeps going, and there's good stuff after that, but it keeps going. So I think that's important to critique too. Like there's a whole aspect of like prestige games, and just because it's more serious does not mean it's more mature. And I think it actually surprisingly is a very mature game. I was very caught off guard because I was ready to also strongly dislike it, and I did not. I was, if anything, more disappointed, just like I'm disappointed in a lot of the conversations going around it. No, and more disappointed in the conversations going around it because of how people are reacting to the negative takes as well. Like I don't think Neil Druckmann like innocent or anything like that. You know, I mean, there's also aspects that need to be discussed about Naughty Dog's like crunch time operations, and how even though workers have come out and said like, hey, it wasn't that bad, it's like it still shouldn't have happened. No, it sets a bad precedent for other games there too. And then with the women that worked in the game as well are all obviously like constantly under attack, like how dare blah 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 blah, right? And like there's a lot of LGBTQ plus representation in the game, and there's valid criticism of how those characters are treated in the game, because it's really brutal. There's sometimes in the game where I'm just like, why did we go there?
Okay.
You know, and other times where I was actually kind of taken back. And I'm a cisgendered white passing Mexican male, so make of that what you will, right? Like I don't get to have a full-on statement of perspective on lesbian characters or transgender characters in media, because I am not those things. I if anything, I'm an ally and just need to raise voices, right? But to me, I was like, I thought it was actually kind of moving. But if that bothers someone, you should listen to the people it's bothering. I don't really fall into the category of people listening to like, oh, like that's just SJW speak or whatever. Like, I don't know. If someone's complaining about something, like, I think more often than not, you need to hear them out.
Yeah,
that's my whole thing, regardless of your own take on it. You know.
I think out of everything that was said, it didn't tie into Star Wars, but it did make a lot of sense.
No,
But
but don't you see that Star Wars happens in a galaxy far, far away? So this is Last of Us 2 just takes place in another galaxy far, far away.
or what if it's like at the very border of the galaxy? Because like in the Clone Wars, how they said there's planets they don't even touch. So what if that's like one of the planets? So yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I guess it did tie into Star Wars at the end.
See, we can tie everything back into Star Wars.
Yeah.
If ET can do it, we can do it.
I guess so. My ultimate take on Last of Us is that I don't understand why there are zombies in the game. I understand, even if I disagree with elements, I understand why everything else is in the game. I don't understand why it's a zombie game. 2 games in, I don't understand. They're not needed. They're the least interesting parts.
I find it super interesting though, just because yeah, like I have an Xbox, so like I'm just listening to all this, and The Last of Us is a game I've really been interested in. So I'm like, yes, tell me more.
Yeah, it's interesting that they kept the zombies around because it's kind of, because classic movie monsters and classic monsters are kind of a play on human fears, and I could probably be wrong about this, but zombies are more of a fear of primal unleashed human. It's kind of like we are the real monsters, and this is us without our intelligence, just like constantly trying to destroy. And it kind of, The Last of Us 2 is very much like, you need to stop the cycle of violence. You are your own monster. You need to stop yourself and just focus on better things. And it hits that at certain points, but at the end, it doesn't work. And
yeah, some of the
zombies are just for fun. They're just there to provide an obstacle, even though there is a main, I guess, obstacle within the game. There is a main goal for different characters. Zombies are just another obstacle. It's just there.
Yeah, going back to what you said about like the violence too. Again, I haven't played the game, so I'm going based off of what I've heard on like podcasts and videos. And there's this one podcast I listen to with the voice actor who does Troy. But no, he does he's Ellie's Joel. There we go.
Yeah. Troy Baker, right?
Yeah, his name's Troy Baker. I got the names mixed up. That like essentially one of the themes, again, I haven't played the game, so I'm going based off what they've said. That like one of the themes of the game is like revenge begets like violence, and like the revenge Ellie's getting revenge for something that they did to him, and it's just a cycle that's never really broken, because it's like, all right, you killed my dad, but now the daughter's like, wait, you killed my dad, and now it just, it keeps going back and forth, more or less. Like that's like the theme, just like how the theme in Star Wars is like Revenge of the Sith, and then the Jedi's got to get their revenge, and so yeah.
But the Jedi do not get revenge. That's why it's Return of the Jedi, and that's why Luke throws his lightsaber aside, because he's a pacifist.
Fuck you guys and the Jedi ways. I'm doing this myself. You guys suck. I'm going to win it over with the power of love and forgiveness.
And that's why I don't understand why people are so conflicted over the Luke decision in The Last Jedi. Bring it back to Star Wars, baby, one more time. The moment, you can disagree with the character, but I don't think you can disagree with the theme, because the moment Luke raises the lightsaber for the first time since Return of the Jedi in cinema history, in that time span, the very first time he raises it, it's a mistake. I think that is a really powerful message for a character that was optimistic and had so much of the world and life ahead of him, that the next time he raises a weapon, he immediately realizes his mistake, and then he has to pay for it. That's why he tosses it aside when he sees it again. That's why he doesn't want to help anyone. That's why he's there by himself, because he was scared of becoming the thing that his father was.
A successful leader who freed the world, nay, the galaxy.
a space Nazi. And so Luke's victory is not in striking down his enemy. It's in spreading a message of hope to the galaxy and still not delivering a single blow against another sentient being. Like, I don't know. To me, that's like just beautiful.
Just to slip something in really quickly, just to loop it back, we're looping a lot of things back. Just to loop it back to people not analyzing and thinking about ideas. I've had so many conversations about in defense of The Last Jedi being like, oh, but wasn't it cool at the end when the kid lifts the broom with the Force, and then it's like hope throughout the galaxy? And I've had so many people say, wait, he lifts it with the Force? What are you talking about? And I said,
Yeah.
yes, watch that scene over again. He lifts it with the Force.
I was pretty disappointed that there was no payout for that. Like I was kind of hoping to see maybe like little
That's
kids.
the point. It doesn't ever. Not everything has to be
I
like.
know. It's me
It's
being a
just
toxic
embers of
fan.
hope.
I just wanted to
No,
see little
no,
kids.
I don't think
you're not being
I don't think that's being a toxic fan at all. I think that's a genuine problem with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
third film. Was like it's not even a good sequel to Force Awakens. I've seen
I'll
people
say
say like
I'll
that,
say this
and it's
too.
not.
One of my biggest problems is that Star Wars didn't have, and I've said this time and time again, they didn't have their Kevin Feige, like this one central guy to be like, okay, here's the beginning, middle, and end. Do whatever you want, but make sure you hit these beats. I just feel like I forget who's the head of Star Wars,
Kathleen Kennedy.
There we go.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she was just like, here, fuck it, do your thing, and I don't. And again, I could be completely wrong, but I just feel like they didn't have like their own Kevin Feige that mapped out the entire plot and said, yeah, do what you want, just make sure you hit these beats. And I feel like that was their biggest problem.
Lewis, I already told Diego these, but do you want to hear my
No,
directors and
it's
ideas
fine.
for a Baby Yoda quadrilogy?
Sure.
Quadrilogy.
Give me 1 second. I'm looking it up.
Okay,
I was
well,
so excited because clearly Baby Yoda should be the central focus of all the movies going forward.
I'm gonna kill
There's no
myself.
doubt. Okay. You guys talk among yourself while I.
Okay. Well, I'll say that I think Kathleen Kennedy is one of the greatest producers who's ever lived. She goes back to like E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like she's one of the goats of Hollywood.
I didn't know any of that.
And that I do agree that they should have at least taken their time with Episode 9. I do not think Episode 9 needed to exist at this point in time because I don't know any specifics. I'm not a Hollywood insider. I just think that maybe if they weren't happy with the person that they initially hired, I don't know why they thought more people would be happy with this version. I don't know. But
that's true. Yeah,
I do think that like the next trilogy we see, because it's Star Wars, you can't break Star Wars. Like Star Wars is the holy grail of franchise filmmaking. It's not even my favorite series. I just think Star Wars, there's something about it that's like eternal, right?
Yeah.
I think the next one, they're gonna take their time. Like they still have a film slated for 2022. That's not gonna happen. That's just not gonna be real. So
Okay,
are
you ready for my plans?
All right, hit us with it.
Okay. The next quad of Star Wars film, Star Wars Baby Yoda, Gifts for the Grateful, which is going to be a Baby Yoda holiday special. Star Wars Baby Yoda, Infestation of the Quasar, where Baby Yoda takes down capitalism. Star Wars Baby Yoda, Face of Despair, which is about Baby Yoda learning to eat his vegetables. And then the last one will be Baby Yoda, Star Wars, Legacy of the Hopeful, where Baby Yoda dies and everyone's sad about it, but it's hoped. And my directors for these films are Taika Waititi, Guillermo del Toro, Ava DuVernay, and then Rian Johnson ends it. And then that's my plans, and I hope it comes true. I am manifesting this like the answer. I'm manifesting it, putting it into the universe. And I want it just because Diego hates Baby Yoda so much. So I just want it to be alive.
Well, you know what? I think this is a good spot to end our podcast because we did go a little bit over. I want everyone to know how much Diego hates Baby Yoda. And really quick though, do you guys have anything you want to plug again? And just to reiterate from the beginning, or any last statements? Go for it. Floor is yours. Diego.
Check out the Waffle Press on Patreon, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud,
you guys have
and iTunes.
On Patreon?
What?
Any lewd benefits on Patreon?
No. It's family friendly. We curse a lot though.
You can DM me and I'll give you lewds of Diego.
Those do not exist. There might be photos when we're out drinking, but they're not lewd. Check out the Waffle Press. Just check out the Waffle Press. It's really fun. We did an Adam Sandler, Steven Spielberg retrospective that's going to go on a little bit of a hiatus, and we're going to do a next retrospective, which is going to be announced eventually very soon because we were already planning that out. Because there's weird stuff happening with Spielberg.
Probably by the time this goes up, it might be live because I do kind of take my time with this. So
take your time. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Noah, anything you want to plug?
You can check me out on the Geek Press on Instagram and Twitter And I'm Joshua Joestar on Twitch. You can check me out there, where I inconsistently play video games, most of which are not interesting, but sometimes they are.
All right, well that sounds fair enough. But yeah, Noah's Jacob Knight on, I think, across the board, and like Jacob Knight vlogs, I think, is like a series. Yeah, so yeah, go look him up there. It's all on YouTube, and then his
Don't look at any of
Instagram.
them.
His
They're all
Instagram
bad.
is yeah, I'll link everything down below.
They're not good. They're bad.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Press, we're on Apple we're on Apple Podcast, and we're on a few other platforms that I forgot. But yeah, we're like herpes. We pop up everywhere.
That's a good tagline. Press. We're like herpes.
All right. But again, I want to thank you, Noah, and again, Diego. Thanks for taking the time out. I know you guys probably have other stuff to do, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I have to go eat lunch, but besides that, I mean, I'm not leaving the house today, so
yeah, I do.
The air is
gotta,
poison.
Yeah, that is true. I do got to do something, but I'm gonna be safe about it.
Yeah, but thank you for having me on, and it was good to see and talk to you guys.
Yeah, you guys too. I miss you, and I love you.
I hope both too. Guest hosting until you're busy, and then just take it over. So that's my plan.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.